Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, neglected tropical diseases affect 1 billion people in our world today. They are the poorest of the poor. They belong to some of the most fragile communities. But as tragic as their reality is, the problem of NTDs used to be much, much worse. On April 19, 2007, exactly 10 years ago, in this very room, the World Health Organization gathered you for the first ever Global Partners meeting, which put in place a multi-stakeholder collaboration. And then 5 years ago, it published a roadmap to implementation, which set a vision for the world. It also inspired the London Declaration, which has surprised everyone for creating the political will to eliminate 10 diseases. Like the fight against AIDS, it's become a model for getting on with the job and finishing that job. Well, so much has changed. Who knew that we would open up our newspapers on Sunday to read that one country has doubled its investment? Who knew that in this political climate of division that we could still talk about unity? And who knew that when we talk about unity, the rallying point would not only be health, but a group of diseases that most of us, including myself, have difficulty pronouncing? So let's look around this table. The heroes are not just the healthcare workers. They're the government leaders in this room. They're the farmer leaders in this room. They're the NGO leaders in this room, and many, many more. When the UK announced its new support, it wasn't just about $450+ million. You look at the figures, it was the $80 million within that that's been earmarked specifically for research and development. People working on treating what we have, but at the same time, people working to turn off the tap. That R&D investment is the future, and it sets a stage for amazing future progress. Today in Geneva, we're here to launch the 4th WHO report on neglected tropical diseases. We're celebrating the many transformative milestones that you've traveled together. But more importantly, we're committing to honor these further by continuing to meet the targets for 2020 and far, far beyond. I'm James Chow. I'm a news anchor at China Central Television in Beijing. I'm also the WHO Goodwill Ambassador for SDGs and Health. It is a great privilege to be here as your moderator. Now, as the moderator, I am your storyteller, weaving your voices together, and through that, building a cohesive narrative. And that means I will call on some of you to add your incredible insights. But because this is a 40-year NTD movement, it will be impossible to squeeze everyone in just 2.5 hours. Now, we're all friends here in this room, so I'm going to be honest with you that I will not get round to everybody who was hoping to speak today, but I know that as brilliant health leaders and as brilliant leaders of people, you will understand. The fact that you're sitting in this room physically already shows that you're committed to this work, and for that, we are extremely grateful. But the story, as I said, will be the leader, and we will follow that story together. Let's introduce you to the first of the game changers here. 2007 was the year of the first ever Global Partners meeting, but 2007 was also the year that Margaret Chan was elected WHO Director General. Since then, she's integrated NTDs into her whole vision, and in doing so, she's made sure that the world has never forgotten about these diseases, nor the dignity of the people who live with them. Dr. Chan, NTDs clearly have a very special place in your heart, and I know that in 2007, I asked around the people who were here at the time. They said that you were touched not only by the generosity, you were touched by the potential for that generosity. In a few weeks' time, member states are going to be electing your successor. What's the one thing, and I know we've been saying this for the last 18 months, but what is the one thing as that time draws closer that the next Director General must know about NTDs, and how can he or she carry forward that progress and achievement?
Moderator, not to ask you to ask me these questions. Because of your excellent skills in moderating sessions that we have seen in the past. But to give you a straight answer to the question, because I see the control of NTD is a pro-poor initiative and a strategy on a massive scale. If the international community walk their talk as they pledge in New York, delivering on 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda to eliminate extreme poverty, there is no better strategy and also opportunity than working on NTD. And we have seen the great success since the London Declaration. So my advice, well, I don't normally advise my successor. The challenge for the next Director General, I hope he or she would, take NTD as a top priority for WHO and reach the NTD goals set for 2020 for, eradication, elimination, and control of a group of diseases that are so horrific, that sap the productivity and the potential of children, women, and men.
Okay, great. So let's take that conversation forward. When Bill Gates was in Beijing a couple of weeks ago, he gave one sentence that got everybody tweeting on social media, on Chinese social media. And it was this line: the best idea of our times is that all lives are equal. But this isn't a new line. You open up the Gates Foundation website, that's the first words that greet you over there. But it is that consistency that's made him one of the greatest champions for all health and arguably of all time. Mr. Gates, you say, and you said it again in your op-ed the other day, that NTDs perpetuates a cycle of poverty. If you get sick, you don't go to school. If you don't go to school, you don't get a job. If you don't get a job, the economy of community doesn't thrive. And when that happens, you become very vulnerable to political instability. We're hearing about all this new support, and some people are saying it's not NTDs anymore. It should just be TDs. Neglected has gone. But when 1 billion people continue to be affected and their basic conditions have not shifted through this yet, is it still NTDs?
Well, thank you. I think that, great. Thank you. I think the best thing with these diseases is not to debate whether they're neglected or not, but to proceed to make them history, and then they can be, we won't have to worry about what to call them. As I make some broad remarks about the incredible initiative here, I want to start by thanking Margaret for her leadership. She's been an incredible partner across so many different areas, and I think the NTD area is just a great example of your commitment to global health. I'm excited to be here today with this group because the last 5 years have been pretty impressive. We didn't meet all of our ambitious goals, but we made immense progress, and I think we've got a great roadmap. We're reaching 1 billion people with treatment, and that's very ambitious because these are some of the hardest to reach communities in the entire world. It's really the leadership and commitment of the people here that have made this possible. You've decided to make this a priority, and for all of us, the goal is simple, to get rid of these diseases. Whenever we talk about these things, I always wonder how much we should remind people how horrific these things are. After all, that's kind of a negative thing, but I think it's really important to keep that in mind. I myself, of course, have never had any one of these diseases, but just imagine somebody with lymphatic filariasis and the incredible enlargement of body parts, which are painful and disfiguring, not only leads to disability, but social stigma. Or African sleeping sickness, which causes not only fever, joint pains, and itching, eventually as the parasites get to the brain, sleep and all of your mental function is completely disrupted. You become confused, you lose coordination, and eventually you die. So these diseases are really an awful thing, and they trap families in a vicious cycle of intergenerational poverty. And because of traditional gender roles like fetching water and childcare, women and girls are at much greater risk of NTDs that are waterborne or spread through close contact. Many of these kids are so disabling that kids can't go to school, their kids can't work, and so your entire economic future is foreclosed. So changing that equation is one of the most important things we can do. Guinea worm is one of our great success stories. Even though we're not absolutely at zero, we are down to very small numbers. And 30 years ago, over 3 million people in 20 countries were afflicted. In Ghana, villages that used to be ravaged by onchocerciasis have gone years without a case. And in the last few years, Guatemala, Mexico, Ecuador, and Colombia have all been declared disease-free. Our efforts on lymphatic filariasis have done a very good job reducing the area at risk, so over 500 million people no longer require treatment. Well, much of this progress has been made because we do have the inexpensive treatments. Now, that doesn't mean it's not possible to make them better. We have clinical trials to see if we can kill adult worms and use simpler dosing things. For instance, one very exciting thing is that early indication shows that it looks like if you give 3 different drugs for lymphatic filariasis instead of the standard 2, it does kill the adult worms, which means that over a 3-year period of high-quality MDA, we should be able to do regional eliminations, and we're on a path to try to do that in India fairly soon. Of course, African sleeping sickness is also one where we're doing very well. We've gone from having a treatment regime which involved lumbar puncture to being on the verge of having oral drugs. We also have a test that makes it easy to tell who's afflicted. So, this is the kind of improvement that makes us believe that we really can meet the goal of eliminating sleeping sickness. So what are the challenges ahead? Well, our surveillance is much improved, but still not good enough. We have to get the mapping to stay up to date and really find all the villages that we need to reach with the medicines. We need to drive the quality of the MDA campaigns to a higher level. I think there's a lot of good lessons that come from the polio work, where we had to achieve extremely high levels of coverage in that disease. I think we can do better at making sure all the data is publicly available and use that to help us coordinate our activities more. Many of you here are doing amazing work getting drugs out to the hardest to reach communities. So it's fantastic to see countries like India, Nigeria, South Sudan, Bangladesh, and the Philippines stepping forward with significant domestic funding. We also have amazing long-standing partners in delivery like the UK and the US, and partners in research funding like Japan, Germany, and France. And as was noted, the UK's just in the last few days made a fantastic increase in their commitment. And of course, WHO, under Margaret's leadership, has played the key central role in forging these partnerships between endemic countries, donor governments, and the pharmaceutical industry that's being so generous with their donations. By working together, we're seeing dramatic progress. From what I understand, we should hear good news on increased resources later this morning, but we need a broader, deeper bench of investors to continue delivering the integrated package of NTD medicines so that by 2030, we can achieve the goal of reaching 90% of the people who need treatment. I know this is achievable. I'm an optimist, so I look forward to discussing our shared commitments this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Well, when President Carter first set up the Carter Center, he said he wanted to use it to address the issues that nobody else wanted to talk about. And over the years, he's done that in many wonderful ways, including in 1986, when the Carter Center began what would become the international movement to eradicate Guinea worm, a disease that he says he wants to outlive. We're going to turn the lights down now and look at the big screens for a special message from President Carter from his home in Atlanta. He will come. While we're still waiting for that video to come up from President Carter, why don't we just push on a little bit with the rest? As we know, we're here also to talk about the fourth WHO report on NTDs. And if we look at the scale of the report and what it says, it really says that good progress, but the job is not finished, so no time for complacency. It says we need to integrate health systems and universal health coverage, and we need to promote the cross-sectoral interventions like water and sanitation, vector control, and veterinary public health, all subjects that we're going to touch on today. But it also says we need continued adhesion among the different parties that have now brought us to the point, including sustained funding commitments. Well, I had the pleasure a couple of years ago of interviewing Kofi Annan, and when I asked him at the time about the state of the world, he said that you must have hope and optimism before you even begin. That same can be said of NTDs and the very ambitious, some said impossible goals all of you set 5 years ago with the roadmap and then with the London Declaration. But 5 years later, we're within touching distance of wiping out some of those diseases. Mr. Nunn, as a global statesman, you're helping solve an endless list of challenges, and your book, Intervention, describes many of those experiences when you led the world as the world's top diplomat. So my question is this: what's the incentive for the world to keep pushing on NTDs? They're not particularly well known. When you open the papers and you see the headlines, and we're inundated with problems each day.
I think the world has an obligation and responsibility to tackle these diseases. You talked about sustainable development goals. There's no way we can achieve them if we leave 1 billion people behind. And from your comments, Dr. Chan's comments, and Bill's comments, the poor are at the receiving end of all this. If we are able to help the poor and we are able to tackle these diseases, we will make a difference in our world. And besides, we live in an interconnected world. Diseases are traveling further and further apart. It cannot be contained in one corner of the world. So we are in this together. We talk a lot about helping the poor, lifting them up, helping smallholder farmers, for example. And yes, a smallholder farmer may be scared to go to till the land because of fear of snake bite. What do we do about that? 100,000 people die from snake bites each year. Some get disfigured. And we also know the difficulty we have in getting the antivenom to them. And the company that was one of the major producers has backed out. Diseases of the poor is often an orphan when it comes to treating diseases. And I think it's wonderful that we are here to push and focus attention on treatment of these diseases. We cannot improve the lot. We cannot say that we are improving conditions of life around the world when 1 billion people or more are left behind. The poor have rights too. The poor must also be supported. And I think what we are trying to do here is extremely important, not just but for all of us.
Just to the science or to the animal health or to the vector control, but framing it in terms of the poor and how we hold those people closest to us is the unifying message from our three speakers, and no doubt one of the great humanitarian champions, President Jimmy Carter, will tell us the same now.
Greetings.
innovator here. Apart from solving our health problems, perhaps we could borrow some people from your office to help fix our video system over here. Here we go.
Greetings. I wish I could be with you in Geneva to participate personally in this very important.
Well, I've actually watched this video, and I can tell you what he says. And until we hear President Carter, probably later in the morning on our third and lucky attempt, he really again unifies that same message about positioning Guinea Worm at the pro-poor, and really talking about it in the context of the fight in the 80s. I mean, it's so easy to look at Ntds as a 5-10 year battle. But when we really think about it, and there's a conversation that I had with the Deputy Director General yesterday, the Ntds movement isn't a 5-10 year movement, it's a 40-year one. And it's a very important one, as President Carter said in his message, because it really provided us with a science base. It was a time where pharmaceuticals really redefined what it was to give when there wasn't really the business incentive to do so at the time. We're going to hear from the pharmaceuticals a bit later, but this is the dialogue where we get all of you gelled together, and we're calling this section Collaborate. And by that we mean working side by side as partners to reach an end goal that cannot be reached. The problems and challenges of NCDs are so great that one organization alone cannot address it, not even WHO. It requires collaboration, teaming up, working together, and we've seen that in progress in motion. And we're starting to see incredible successes that directly come from those partnerships. Now, partnerships in NTDs could become a model for partnerships in all conflicts. And one day when we look back, we might be quoting the people in this room for their innovations, their accomplishments, and for daring to dream big. I don't dare go to our next video, so I'm going to skip there and turn now to Lord Bates, who very kindly is here to represent the United Kingdom. We were originally going to have the Secretary of State, Priti Patel, but as we all know, 24 hours ago, something almost as important as the fight against NTDs came out in the news. But we're truly honored to have you with us, Lord Bates. One of the key movers, the UK, in terms of bilateral donors, and amongst the many governments represented in this room, the UK and also USAID, the two biggest and pioneering funders of their kind. Lord Bates, you're here speaking for the Secretary of State. Of that doubling in funding that will go to NTDs, President Carter said at the weekend the UK government understands that helping people help themselves is an honourable and cost-effective way to reduce poverty and increase hope. Very powerful and strong words.
Indeed, James, and I think I speak for all of us in saying how delighted we are to be in the hands of such an unflappable news anchor when things go wrong. And so we appreciate it. It's a great honour and a privilege to be here. We're here because we recognise that neglected tropical diseases inflict appalling human suffering on the poorest people in the world. They kill, they disable, they disfigure. Sufferers are stigmatized and locked out of opportunities. NTDs, as Mr. Gates has already reminded us, stop children going to school, they stop parents going to work, they are costing development economies billions of dollars every year in lost productivity. But all this human misery is preventable. We have the power to end this. In the last 5 years, we've started to make real progress thanks to powerful global movement between endemic countries, donors, pharmaceutical companies, the Carter Center, and others. In 2015, about 1 billion people received treatment for at least one NTD, an unprecedented achievement. We've made real inroads towards eliminating diseases as well. In 2016, there were 25 human cases of Guinea worm worldwide, down from 3.5 million in 1986. And I'd like to take this opportunity to commend President Carter for his leadership on Guinea worm eradication. Importantly, the success we've seen in tackling NTDs has hinged on a uniquely powerful public-private partnership. Most drugs for NTDs are donated by companies, and without this generous support, we would not be able to make the progress we have, and we would do so at a far higher cost. Britain has played a leading role in this success through our commitment to UK aid, through our leading NGOs, through our pharmaceutical companies, generous donations, and through our world-class universities and researchers, all working together. And since 2009, UK, working with GlaxoSmithKline Beecham and the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, have provided 217 million people with treatment against lymphatic filariasis. In 2016, UK aid, working with Sight Savers, treated 17 million people with antibiotics against trachoma. We also supported 19 million treatments for schistosomiasis, working with Imperial College London. And UK aid supported the development of the first ever rapid diagnostic test to screen for sleeping sickness. This simple test that is not reliant on electricity, but can be used in rural, hard-to-reach locations, and is now being used in 19 countries. We've also established important international relationships with USAID, the Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, and the World Bank. However, far as we've come, there's a lot further to go. We know that how many people are affected, and thanks to companies like GSK, we have donated the drugs, but right now we need to have the funds as well to get them to the people who need them. This needs to change. I'll be announcing a significant new contribution from Britain today, but clearly we need others to step up if we're to finish the job on NTDs. We need national governments to prioritise this still further and increase their health budgets, and we urgently need to look for new funding from new donors. These diseases are named neglected for a reason, but it's not a name we can afford to accept. We know what to do, we know what works. Let's rise to the challenge and end the misery of NTDs for good. Thank you.
And Lord Bates will return to you at the end of the morning to talk about those announcements that I know that you want to share with us. But I'm thinking about countries and I'm thinking about bilateral donors. And it's not just about donating in financial terms, although that's extremely important, but donating through political leadership. So if I look around the room and we try to paint that story, I'm going to call on some of you now, and maybe let's start with Germany. Ambassador Ntds, I mean, obviously you had the G7, but where you put NTDs on the roadmap. What I want to know is that very, very briefly, in just a sentence or two, is Germany going to take that now forward, say, for G20 countries?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chow. Indeed, we had this focus in the G7 presidency 2015, but it's on the agenda for the decades in the development commitment of Germany. But the health of people, in our view, is inextricably linked to their living conditions. This is why the fight against NTD cannot be won, and sustainable development, in our view, will not be possible and not be achieved without strong and resilient health systems as the platforms for achieving and sustaining progress. We are therefore pleased to report that the G20 Health Ministers meeting, to be held in Germany in mid-May, this year, will also focus on the importance of strong and integrated health systems and the need to have improved international collaboration in this regard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So let's move this across. I mean, let's move this over to Spain. Dr. Guillen Navarro, you are here not only as a regional health minister, you're here speaking on behalf of the Spanish health minister at federal level. I want you to perhaps converse that with Germany next to you, where they're taking on that leadership of the G20. You were very active back in the early 2000s on NTDs. Give me one idea that you can share with future leaders.
Thank you. I think it's very important what Germany said about the international collaboration and also to make sure everybody that if we don't incorporate all people to our improvement of the health, it's not enough in the world. So I think it's very important the collaboration between all countries to achieve this goal.
When you hear about that, Ambassador, when you hear about the 20 countries that you're leading on right now, is there any ask that you have of an organization like WHO to help bring that collaboration further to life?
I think we're actively working with the WHO, Dr. Chan, of course, in doing that. And I think there is a real reason to commend the efforts of private-public partnerships, but there is also a real reason to establish a system of health in the respective countries to make them resilient. And this is having a kind of connection between the prevention, the research and development, and finally the treatment of diseases.
Okay. So we've got the collaboration, we've got the partnerships, we've got the political leadership. Let's bring that now to endemic countries, to Ethiopia, which, for example, carries a significant burden. The London Declaration, as we heard just there, sought to wipe out 10 diseases. Your country has identified 8 diseases as priority NDDs, but there are success stories. Minister Berhan, could you just give us one success story that's really worked for Ethiopia and which can pull everybody else up with it?
Okay, thank you very much. Probably Ethiopia is one of the countries with highly endemic neglected tropical diseases, and among others, trachoma is highly prevalent in some regional states of Ethiopia. And luckily, in the last 2 years, we were able to reduce the number of trachoma-related complicated cases by doing surgery, and the surgeries were performed not as usual by ophthalmologists, rather by trained nurses. And we are confident that we'll be doing all the remaining TT cases in the coming this year and in the coming 1 year. So we'll be successful in clearing all TT cases in the coming 2 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. Let's now loop that in with Japan and with the Ambassador Shino, who's here at the permanent mission in Geneva. Thank you very much for joining us, of course. When I looked into your personal history as a diplomat, you headed at the Foreign Ministry the Human Rights and Humanitarian Affairs Division. So as I said, we've talked about funding, we've talked about political will, but we always need to remind ourselves of why we're doing it. There are many people watching on the live stream right now. Why are human rights important? Why should they be at the center of the approach, not only to diseases like AIDS, TB, malaria, but equally to the NTDs as well?
All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. That's the Article 1 of the Universal Human Rights Declaration. And Mr. Chow, you hit my most passionate part of my career, human rights. Yes, nobody shall be left behind. Human rights must be addressed first and foremost and should continue to be addressed in our endeavor to achieve the well-being of all people. Needless to say, health is the most essential pillar of human well-being. When we all discussing anything related to health, we are, in effect, simultaneously discussing human rights. Therefore, no disease should ever be neglected, just as no person's human rights should ever be neglected. As some of the distinguished guests have already clearly stated, some kinds of diseases can neither be addressed solely by the public sector nor solely by the private sector. This is why we need collaboration and partnership to achieve health for all. I don't want to go in detail of lengthy history of Japan addressing or not neglecting this concept of neglected diseases. 1997 G8 Denver Summit, and 10 years later with the wife of that Prime Minister, and now 2017, 10 more years later. We addressed again at the latest G7 Summit in Ise-shima. Health was one of the main pillars of the agenda, and the government of Japan announced an additional contribution of $130 million for the activities of the GIST Fund and UNDP to tackle NTDs, malaria, and tuberculosis. Our continuing commitment to global health is rooted in the basic concept of our diplomacy, human security. We are also taking initiatives to eliminate discrimination or stigma against persons affected by leprosy and their family members. This is partly because we ourselves had not abolished the law, which included an isolation policy until 1996. We cannot change the past, but we can take action for the future. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate the fact that health is the most essential element of the human security or human rights. The ultimate purpose of all efforts we make should be not just to eliminate diseases or improve the health system, but to contribute to improving the well-being of each and every individual. Thank you.
Well, when I hear you talk about your passion point as you describe it, you remind me of Mary Robinson, who carries a copy of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in her handbag, and you know that, Mr. Anand, as well. Dr. Chan?
James, at the risk of disrupting you, I think it is my duty to inform you, particularly for the benefit of the newcomers to this executive board room. We have simultaneous translation facilities arranged for you, and you need to use the earphone, which is close to your seat, and the channels are all listed there. Number 1 is the speaker's language, number 2 is English, number 3 is French, number 4 is Russian, number 5 is Spanish, and number 6, last but not the least, is Chinese. So, you know, the room is big, but you may not hear some of the comments so well, so do use the earphone. Sorry, James.
I was told this meeting is history-making, but I think history-making is the first time I've heard the head of a UN agency giving SI instructions, so thank you very much for that as well. Thank you very much to Ambassador from Japan. And you mentioned their leprosy, and of course, we've got the WHO Goodwill Ambassador, Mr. Sasakawa, who's focused his giving and his life on leprosy, and we'll be hearing from him later on. But why don't we stick with Japan for a little bit longer? Because it's not just at government level, also in private sector, especially in pharmaceuticals. We've got Haruo Naito, the CEO of Eisai. He spoke brilliantly yesterday at the event on Ntds. Your company is donating, I know, I heard it's something like 2.2 billion tablets over a 7-year period for preventative chemotherapy of lymphatic filariasis. And it's done through WHO, is expiring in 2020. You're here to represent all the farmers as co-chair of the CEO Roundtable. What can you say about the contribution of private sector to the NTD scale-up? And I'm going to put you on the spot here. Are you going to go beyond 2022?
Thank you, James. You know, pharmaceutical industry can do at least 2 fundamental things. One is producing high-quality products, stable supply at affordable level. Second is, as Dr. Chan always said, innovation. We can create bringing in new remedies to NTDs. However, to the real end, those, you know, innovation, invention, or supply should be taken by the patients, people who need it in the field, in epidemic areas. That's why we definitely need a very heavy collaboration, partnership with all stakeholders gathering in this you know, roundtable. Particularly, I like to emphasize the importance of local governments. Because at the end of the day, what is the quality of MDA? How you raise awareness, how you educate people to take our medicine is all depend on the quality of field service. So I particularly like to emphasize the importance of the collaboration with local governments.
Okay. So Mr. Naito's thrown out a challenge there. Before I ask local governments, maybe I could ask...
James, one more thing.
Please.
At least our company committed to supply DEC for LF until the end of elimination.
Very much. I want to ask Sanofi as well to draw on what Mr. Naito said. I mean, he speaks on behalf of the CEO roundtables. Sanofi is one of the two main providers of donated medicines for the clinical treatment of NTDs. And for example, you're giving unlimited quantities till 2020 of 3 types of medicines for the treatment of human African trypanosomiasis. So do you agree that it has to be that linkage with local governments? Is that also the model for you? And for the local governments or the ministries here who do link up to local governments, is that what they need to go back to their capitals and say to them?
Yes, thank you, James. I think that just to build on what was said before, I think for us the collaboration was always to go beyond drugs. So the provision of vital drugs is what we can provide from an industry, but the science, the education, the actual ability to screen, to reach out and partner with local governments is a vital part of the whole chain. And for us actually in Sanofi, or at that time Aventis, the collaboration started in 2001 where we started to actually look at sleeping sickness. And I think it's wonderful to actually now look at the journey and say that over this period of time till now, 37 million people have been screened for what was a disease that was invariably fatal and was described by Mr. Gates earlier today. And you talk about screening. Screening at that time included, in some of the most remote areas of the world, doing lumbar punctures in those days. So just imagine doing lumbar punctures in the middle of rural areas to be able to do that. But today I think we're very pleased to say that, over 200,000 patients have been treated. So that's not just the provision of drug, but it's the whole chain to actually get the drug and educated and screened to the people who need it. And the case burden is now less than 3,000 in 1 year. So I think we're on track to eliminate sleeping sickness, but the journey should not stop there because we have to continue to actually eliminate the transmission of the disease, and we think that continued effort beyond 2020 is absolutely essential if we're not going to see a resurgence that is so common in these cases where you get close but never fully eradicate what we want to, which is a significant disease.
Thanks very much, Amit. Let's go to Michael Schüttler from Bayer. And again, I don't want to overstress the importance of funding, as we all know. Bayer has a number of donated medicines with commitments until 1920 and also 2021 for second-line Chagas and again for sleeping sickness. I mean, how effective have these been? But I suppose what I really want to ask you, for the 1 billion people who are holding on for hope, is there hope from any of the pharmaceuticals? What are the clinical trials? What are the innovations, the basis of science that you can exploit? Can we look forward to new treatments even?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's working? Yes. First of all, I think my company, like other companies, have a long-standing collaboration with WHO, but also with other partners like DNDi or the Gates Foundation, or also companies like Sanofi, where we have developed together a treatment together with DNDi against sleeping sickness. Today and also in future, our NTD commitment is based on 3 pillars. First, drug donations and support of vector control for African sleeping sickness and Chagas disease. And coming back to your question, second pillar is about drug development activities. Together with DNDi, and I look to Bernard Pecoul, we are currently developing our product Emodepside as an innovative treatment against river blindness. Furthermore, we support the development of pediatric formulation of our compound Nifurtimox to help newborns and children to be cured in the best way from Chagas disease. And our third pillar is financial contributions. We give financial support for mobile intervention teams in DR Congo as a country of highest disease burden for African sleeping sickness and support awareness, education and training activities. And last but not least, let me highlight that we do all these activities not alone, but in trustful partnerships, because our strong belief is that good and efficient collaborations between different stakeholders is key to make a difference, to be successful in the fight against NTDs. And so we are always open as our company for new common opportunities in future to fight NTDs, but with focus on African sleeping sickness and Chagas disease. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schuttler. We're going to come back to the pharmaceuticals later, but when we hear about collaboration, I'm hearing about the academic community that was very important to the NTD movement over the many decades that have gone by, but also private philanthropists. And as we've seen today, to overcome the diseases, we require many key actors and that singular united approach. One of them, of course, is the N Fund, which has raised over $75 million since the London Declaration. And Bill Campbell, you serve as its chair. I mean, help us understand the motivation. And it's a similar question to the one I gave Mr. Anand earlier about global conflicts and how to make NTDs stand out amongst them. For private philanthropists, I mean, they're focusing their private resources on the control and elimination of NTDs. How big of a sell is it? I mean, we know that these diseases have extremely high impact on the most vulnerable people in our world, but in the mainstream, they're not as well known as, say, AIDS, TB, and malaria. And Bill Gates has said that as well. He said it has as bigger impact as all these, but it doesn't have the same projection sometimes in the mainstream.
Well, I guess you've summarized both the problem and the opportunity. On a micro basis, as we learned yesterday afternoon, for instance, from the second panel, these are amongst the most heart-wrenching and compelling stories that you can see on an individual basis. One-on-one, we always win, and in fact, that's the core of our board. Our board is composed of activist philanthropists who in fact want to deal with our macro problem, which is in fact always around awareness. It's not only awareness of the diseases and their terribly difficult names, but also the understanding that these diseases have immense potential for positive resolution that people at this point don't really understand. As I like to say, we have the best value proposition in the health business. Unfortunately, only the health business knows of us. So that's in fact what we're trying to tackle at the N Fund. 5 years ago, we were in our early stages of development. We started with the help of activists like myself, Legatum, very early support from the Gates Foundation was wonderful. Over the intervening 5 years, we've found from around the world, Elma Foundation, Helmsley, GiveWell, the World Economic Forum, Anglican Church, maybe equally importantly, certainly, local telecom people have become involved. We've got local mining, oil and gas people involved because they want their people to be at work. They want their audiences to understand these diseases. And all of this is sort of promoted by what I call activist philanthropists led by the board, all of the board, including my family, his family, and virtually everyone that's involved in our cause has been on site and been part of the movement against NTDs. You know, I like to talk about last year at this time, my family was in, my and his family both were in Ethiopia massaging and washing feet crippled with elephantiasis. Next month, a big part of our board will be in Victoria Falls doing a march. Many of our board have climbed Kilimanjaro to raise money. So this is an activist movement. We all love what we do. We've raised, as you said, about 75 million so far, with 340 million active treatments, and we plan to double each and every one of those numbers in the next 5 years. So what do we have left to do? As per your program, more collaboration, some acceleration. We need to cement our relationships with particularly water and sanitation, or WASH as we call it. That needs to be done better in order to prevent retransmission. We need to do it I was reminded this morning we need to do it with incredible rigor, and we need to do it with measurement, and we plan to do that. We plan to be better in terms of community leadership. Obviously, we need to get down into grassroots and hold those people responsible. And especially, we need to build community leadership among young people. Many of you will remember from yesterday Gerald speaking. Obviously, leadership in the hands of those kind of young people, in the hands of new age electronics, is so powerful, and that has to be part of the End Fund mission. Thank you.
Okay. Right, so, and you have to eliminate 10 diseases as well.
Yeah.
That was the other thing I forgot. There's one thing you forgot on your list. I've been watching Dr. Chan, and what she always does during these meetings, her and AB, they scribble notes, and they're going to give us their thoughts at the end of the morning session. But I know that what Dr. Chan always wants to know, she always wants to learn from us together, from you together. And I'm not sure if you're thinking this, but where are the communications in this? What should we be doing as a community to help the people who give, for example? So you're donating billions of tablets, we know that. You're donating money. And in some cases, I think even with GSK, you're actually providing the funding and the services to make sure that the distribution also reaches the people. It's not just about the tablets. So does anybody here have a comment on what the community should be doing to support that process? Should it, for example, be better packaged in terms of media? Should it be better branded in terms of a product? One idea from anyone here in the circle? Just one idea?
Thank you, James. Thank you. I would like to emphasize this aspect, what we are working in the region of Murcia for Chagas disease. In this region, with 1.5 million inhabitants, but 40,000 people who are immigrants, 10,000 of them from Bolivia, and we have treated and diagnosed 2,000 of people, and all of them have been followed up. Our goal now is to interact the transmission, the vertical transmission, and also the transmission through transplant and transfusions. And we are going to, we want to be the first region to eradicate this transmission of Chagas. We have to say that the access to the health system for immigrants is free for all of them. So we can help them to be followed up and treated in the best way to eradicate Chagas disease in the region of Murcia in Spain.
So I think if we look at that one example, what I can draw from that is that we don't just look at the neglected tropical diseases as the 18 separate diseases, but we use it as not only the human rights approach, but the people-centered approach to that you tell that story on impact. I think we did this once during non-communicable diseases, and some of the donors were here and they were talking about, tell us the story of impact, tell us how it transforms lives, tell us how it changes communities. So that's one idea that we could use over there. Just want to wrap up this section quickly before we move to accelerate. Bernard Pekul, I mean, you're here for DNDi. I want to ask you just very quickly about public-private partnerships and their involvement in product development, specifically on the expansion of these initiatives. 2007, 2017, what's the one highlight for you?
DNDi was created on a consensus that when there is no commercial incentives, we need to create new models, innovative models, to bring together public and private partners to boost innovations. In London, five years ago, we had two asks. One is to improve access to compounds libraries from the companies. And here we have tested 3 million compounds during the last 5 years. We have built a new innovative model called Drug Booster with 5 companies that have accepted to share their knowledge, share the compounds, and today Merck is joining, so we have 6. And the second axe was to build a partnership with industry to develop drugs. And here, some have been mentioned already. So with onchocercosis, we have a partnership with Bayer, another one with AbbVie. On Chagas, we have a partnership with Mundosano and Eisai. With Eisai, we have also a partnership on mycetoma, very neglected diseases. On sleeping sickness, we are expecting with Sanofi to have an oral treatment available next year that will totally change the management of the disease. And leishmaniasis, we have several partners to try to bring oral treatment to a disease that is extremely difficult to manage today. But to be successful, we need also leadership, a strong leadership from WHO. We need a commitment from the Ministry of Health, from the control programs in the countries, and academic institutions, because without a strong public leadership, we cannot achieve sustainable change. Last but not least, we need investment on this field. So I want to thank the governments and the private funding. But I think to end my comments, I want to say that we are not yet there. And today is a good opportunity to remind us our responsibility to continue to invest in innovation, because we need to succeed in developing better, safer treatment for neglected patients.
Dr. Chan.
The NDI colleague has said. In the London meeting, you have 2 asks. And I want to know what are the other 2 asks that you're going to do in this second meeting. Because it is very seldom. We talk about the importance of the NGO, the activists, the academic, the farmer, the donor countries, and the endemic countries. Very seldom do they come together and sit in the same room and listen to each other. And that is extremely important for me. As WHO, we convene all stakeholders, and we listen to you. We want to hear from you. What are the next 2 asks to get the 2020 roadmap implemented and going beyond to 2030 agenda of the sustainable development? So give us some asks, and when we receive the asks, we will nudge, we will persuade, we will urge, and we will bring partners together to make it possible. Thank you.
We do this at the end of the morning session. We get a quick gauge of what those asks are going to be, so that since we're all physically in this room, and it's taken an incredible effort to get all of you together, and this has been one of the most overwhelming responses at a WHO meeting for people to want to speak. So we know you're committed, and at the end of the morning session, we'll do a quick whip round of those asks that Dr. Chan is asking for. But don't just come with the ask that you came here to ask. Listen to what the different stakeholders are saying and refine your ask based on that. It's got to be that, like the SDGs, it's got to be that lateral approach. It's not vertical anymore. The last thing I did want to talk about when we talk about collaboration was academic partners. And Professor Nicia Trindade de Lima is the president of the Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, but you're also here to represent the academic collaboration, which I've been told has been really critical to the progress of NTDs. But I think a lot of people might not know that. And just a reminder again that we're being watched by a lot of people who are not in NTDs on the live stream online right now. Give us 2 reasons why academia is so important and why that needs to be supported as well.
Good morning. Academic institutions are very important in this partnership. Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, Fiocruz, represents in Brazil the health ministry in terms of science and technology development. I think that the important point is to think about neglected populations more than neglected diseases. And to do so, we are developing a lot of initiatives. I think that is important that neglected populations are no longer affected by the manifestations of social determinants of health. In Brazil, in the recent experience, it's important to say that we have the concept of the right to health. The health sector needs to act in coordination with the other sectors, guaranteeing free access to quality service, assigning resources to health promotion and education. In the field of diagnosis, we have important initiatives at Oswaldo Cruz Foundation in terms of cooperation with the NDI initiative and cooperation with WHO and the private sector. An important point is to think about the relationship between the public and health sector in a win-win game, as a win-win game. This is important in the recent experience in Brazil, to think about the research for innovation, translational research. We are collaborating in many areas, and together with other parts, we can move the challenge of meeting, collaborate, accelerate, and eliminate neglected tropical diseases. This point is important in terms of production of vaccines, drugs. I think that is very important now, the Brazilian experience on arboviruses, as the case of dengue, Zika, and chikungunya. Dr. Margaret Chan visited us the last year, and the research about Zika is very improved in Brazil, and I think that you have to learn about this experience.
Dr. Chan visited during the Rio Olympics, no less.
Professor Lima is the first woman president of the famous, Fiocruz Foundation. Welcome.
I just want to tie up on Brazil, Ambassador Azevedo. I mean, you heard Germany talk about its past presidency of G7, how it took on the Ntds mantle, and how it hopes to push that. The big health ministers meeting, we know, I think it's in Berlin, isn't it, in May? And then we had Japan, who had that mantle, and then, of course, now it's with Italy. But Brazil has its own unique voice as a founding member of BRICS, for example, as a very, very powerful political country. And then when I think of the humanists in your country, there are people like Patriota, who really uses health and combines it with politics and really pushes it forward when he was foreign ministry and then ambassador as well. Very quickly, just can you build on what the messages we heard that open up this session? Can you follow where they have gone to?
First, let me thank you very much for having me here. I know I took this meeting by assault yesterday. I was being briefed by my team at the mission yesterday, and when I heard about, the historic meaning of this meeting, I said, I have to be there. I have to be there to send a message. And my message is very simple and very important for us. Brazil is a tropical country. And being a tropical country, we need to be at the core of the fight against neglected tropical diseases. As I think Madam Chang said, and also Mr. Gates at the beginning of this meeting, we need to transform neglected tropical diseases into treated tropical diseases, eliminated tropical diseases, or at least controlled tropical diseases. So I came to this meeting today accompanied by two very important Brazilians. You have already presented Dr. Lima, who is the president of the largest health research institution in Brazil. And I'm also accompanied by Mr. Carlos Sanchez, who is the president of the board of EMS, the largest pharmaceutical company in Brazil. And we are here today to say that Brazil has to be at the core of this fight. Brazil can play a global role in the issues of global health, and we want to be a part of this effort. As being part of the BRICS, Brazil is ready to promote among the BRICS countries, and also as a member of G20, we are very much engaged in the preparation of the next meeting. We want to play this role, and we want to be a part of it. So the message is clear. Our participation here in this event underlines the Brazilian government's commitment and the Brazilian private sector's capacity to play a bigger role in this organization, not only on NTDs, Madam Chang, but on a wider range of global health. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know also, not only in BRICS, but especially through BRICS and new development also, that Brazil's been working very well with countries like China, for example, Russia, India, on pushing that agenda forward. You say that you want to be a part of it.
We have also been working very closely with African countries that speak Portuguese. We have this community of Portuguese-speaking countries, CPLP. Brazil and Portugal and some African countries are also working very closely to fight neglected tropical diseases. We have, I'm sure Dr. Lima will be able to share with you our experience in Mozambique.
So what I'm hearing here is that collaboration has had to be creative. You've had to draw on cultural lines, linguistic lines, science lines, political lines, anything to squeeze out those partnerships. And I think I'm right, but I know that you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mr. Sanchez in EMS is the only private pharmaceutical that's donating medicines, and I know that we're going to hear from you. So when you say that Brazil wants to be a part of it, Brazil is already a part of it. Thank you very much for that. The team at WHO has created a video to show you what your collaboration has achieved so far and where it's taken us. We'll take down the lights and we'll have a look at what's happened in the last 5 years. Your journey so far and the journey still ahead. Well, we've talked about collaborate, but how do we accelerate from there? How do we really push forward on the momentum that you've already generated? And how do we bring that to 2020? And now Dr. Chan says, let's go and think about 2030, the SDGs far beyond that. Well, that's where WHO comes in, the organization that's hosting us today, to coordinate all these great initiatives and then make that magic happen. But what are we working for and who are we working for? Well, if we break down the numbers alone, the 5 most common NTDs create up to 90% of the burden, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. Matshidiso Moeti is WHO's regional director in the Africa region. And just in the last 2 days, the one word I keep hearing about is ESPN, ESPN, ESPN. And I said to somebody, what's ESPN? You're giving me more terminology to learn this week. And they said it was the expanded special project for elimination of neglected tropical diseases. More than just a group of words. How does it save lives?
Thank you very much, James, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words about ESPN. But at the start, I have to say I'm so excited and so inspired to be in this room with this group of people, leaders, demonstrate from different sectors, demonstrating unprecedented global collaboration and philanthropy with a focus on equity in order to eliminate these neglected diseases. So we're very excited from WHO Afro to be a part of this. And we have seen tremendous progress. I just want to mention that recently the Director General of WHO officially declared the elimination of lymphatic filariasis as a public health problem in Togo, and the minister is over there. So we'd like to congratulate them for their contribution. Which we heard at a dinner last night has been achieved very much with the collaboration of all the people who are represented here, and with a very important role played by communities, philanthropists, scientists, the government, and partners. So ESPN, the buzzword for this meeting. Thank you, James. We're celebrating 1 year, and we'll have a lunch to do that tomorrow, of our expanded special project on the elimination of NTDs. And this is a program we have developed evolving out of APOC, the African Program on Onchocerciasis Control. And what's exciting about it, just following up on the film that we saw, is that we are going to take an integrated approach on working to control and towards the elimination of the 5 PC NTDs, so those NTDs that are amenable to treatment. We think that this small program, and we have had a very exciting time putting it in place, and thank all of our partners for their support and their partnership, is uniquely positioned in an effort to support countries to work primarily with governments in the driving seat. And as WHO, we work closely with governments, and we'd like to support them to be owning the agenda, working with their partners so that they determine what needs to be done, and all of us support them to contribute. So what are we going to be doing as a small WHO team, leveraging our organization's technical capacity, but also the funding and technical capacity of all the partners that are working on these 5 NTDs? We work already to advocate with ministries of health and ministries of finance to improve prioritization and domestic financing for health. And we'll add to this, importantly, NTDs. So we're going to be advocating for increased domestic funding so that we leverage even more international funding, and we were so excited to hear about the UK's declaration. Secondly, mapping and providing data to support decision-making and action. And we've already made quite a lot of progress in mapping all the NTDs in the region. We are putting together all the information, and we will soon, working with countries, be making that available to all stakeholders so that this data can guide their actions. I believe that we've set collectively very bold and ambitious targets around driving towards the elimination of diseases, but I believe that governments in the driver's seat, taking their responsibility, data guiding all of us in our actions, partnership, which is a very important component of the collective work that we are doing together, and communities determining what needs to happen, having their say in what they see is going to benefit them, will make us move towards success. I'm very, very optimistic that we're going to succeed in this endeavor. Thank you, James.
Well, you've had so much success in your own region. We talk about the burden, but at least now we can talk about the progress. And again, and when I looked at Dr. Chan nodding away, it was that word community. And I know that you're a great believer that as technicians that you may be at WHO, it's also very much a humanitarian agency first and foremost. You mentioned there the UK, and you talked about that funding over there, and we heard that, and I think also we have Irene Koch, who's here, the other biggest bilateral donor, which is of course USAID. There are shifting sands, and I think we can all acknowledge that right around the world in the geopolitical climate. And the United States has done so much to save, to improve, to transform lives, but also when you transform one life, you transform generations in a family, you change a whole community. Across health, but particularly in the NTDs. When we think about Accelerate, and broadly speaking, what can we look forward to? I mean, what form of leadership do you think that the US and USAID will take moving forward?
Thank you, James. I think moving forward, one of the hallmarks of the NTD community, as we've been hearing about, is really partnership. Partnership with governments, with donors like the UK and the US, with the pharmaceutical industry, with private sector, and with communities. And I think that's one of the things to take forward moving forward. As we've talked about, this is the Accelerate panel. Previously was Collaborate, but you can't accelerate without collaboration, and I certainly think that's what we need to do. Mr. Gates talked about ambition and the ambitious goals of the NTD movement, and the fact that the community has reached 1 billion people in 2015 is really quite remarkable. I mean, it was not even on the table 10 years ago when we were sitting in this room. The time USAID had just started our support for countries in neglected tropical diseases and leveraging the generous donations from the pharmaceutical industry to help distribute them. But we were hoping to reach communities and districts at most, but to have countries completely eliminate something like lymphatic filariasis is really quite phenomenal. And I think that's using that ambition as we move forward is something we really, really need to do and really need to move together on.
You are helping hundreds of millions of people conservatively, if not well over 1 billion, for NTDs specifically. Many of those people will be wanting to hear, are you ready to say, it's going to be okay, you're going to be okay, we're going to hold your hand through this going forward?
This is the neglected tropical disease effort that we've been supporting and very proudly supporting for the last 10 years is a core part of what we do in global health. And I fully expect that to be a core part of what we do moving forward. The kinds of partnerships that we've been hearing about today is really, it's an incredibly important story and important message, and I think that's one that really resonates to a very, very great deal in the U.S.
Many people are very appreciative as well. Irene Koch, who's the Global Health Lead at USAID, thank you very much. I'm going to go to your neighbor, Minister Abojedo of Ghana, and we've seen tremendous progress again in your country, and I was talking to the Deputy Director General right before this. One success story that everybody else can try and emulate in their communities. One success story.
Thank you very much, James. I think one success story in Ghana is the Guinea Worm eradication as of July 2014. And then we also have trachoma eliminated by 2015, and others that are in progress. I think Ghana's program has been one of the most successful one among the countries that have these challenges. But we are not stopping, we are not resting on our house. Going forward, there's a new government in place. We still have some challenges talking to the program managers, and the new government is committed to actually taking the success stories even further, because it is always good to have do some of these things successfully. And given the success we have achieved, the new government is committed to supporting whatever lapses is there. I'm being told that we have challenges in funding programs like once a year deworming for every school-age child. This is something that has not been taken on board by the program. But my government is committed to actually taking it on board so that we can actually help in preventing some of the diseases instead of waiting for it to happen before we actually find drugs to support it. The government also is investing in innovative areas like drug distribution in the country. Just last week, there's some suppliers came to my office with how we can employ technology in the distribution of drugs so that it will be more efficient. So that where there's a shortage somewhere, by a click of a button, it will show at the program office, and we can always rush the drugs there as soon as possible.
Well, I think everybody will be heartened by the messages coming from you both. You're relatively new in your ministerial position, and I'm sure everyone wishes you the best of luck. And also very new in the position is Dr. Fikri, who is the new regional director for the Middle East at the World Health Organization. And I was looking through in the research for today's event that I mean, even just Schistosomiasis, widely present Eastern Mediterranean. You've got a real mix of countries, high burden, low burden, and you're supporting efforts to accelerate the scale up of mass treatment with the help of your partners, inviting governments to commit to that final push. And I remember looking through, and you had Sudan completed that mapping, treating more than 3 million last year. Somalia, done the same, mass treatment in April just this month. And then I think you have the most number of emergencies of any WHO region. And they are ongoing, and people sometimes don't understand the great risk that frontline workers at WHO go through every day in your region. Yemen, for example, treating more than 2.2 million people in spite of the conflict, which reminds us that even in war, normal life continues. And with regards to your low-burden countries, Egypt adopting elimination plans, Iraq, Iran, Morocco, Oman. But Dr. Fikri, I want to ask you specifically about what President Carter spoke about, what Mr. Gates spoke about, which is the Guinea worm disease and the eradication of that and others. Where are you at with Guinea worm?
Thank you, Mr. James. I think you said all what I want to say. But anyhow, thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. This is my 4th month as a regional director. First of all, I would like to say here, I am a tropical medicine specialist. So the tropical diseases is one of my commitment to fight against these diseases, a professional commitment. So I see also here, where I see Mr. Bill Gates, DG, and Mr. Kofi Annan, and everybody, health minister, everybody are engaged here under private companies. So this is give us the, putting the Ntds elimination and eradication from the world as a front line on the agenda of WHO. When we come to the Schistosomiasis, it is really widely presented in Eastern Mediterranean region. And we have high burden and low burden countries. In high burden countries, we are supporting efforts to accelerate scale up of mass treatment with the help of the several partners. And in low burden countries, we are inviting government to commit to the final push towards interruption of transmission and elimination. So we'll take some example. As James said, Sudan has recently completed mapping and has treated more than 3.3 million people in 2016. In Somalia, with all security difficulties, with all crises there. So we has recently completed mapping and implemented the first mass treatment in April 2017. When we come to Yemen, also again, we have, in spite of the conflict, Yemen treated more than 2.2 million in 2016. So I acknowledge here the major financial support received from the World Bank for Yemen. With regard to the low-burden countries, for example, Egypt, and this is showing the political commitment also and the government engagement. Egypt adopted Schistosomiasis elimination plan and made its implementation possible through the extensive domestic funding. Then we have very few countries like Iraq, Iran, Morocco, Oman are implementing survey to confirm interruption of the transmission of schistosomiasis. In conclusion, I am personally committed to sustain these successes, scale up intervention, and further accelerate progress towards achievement of elimination of schistosomiasis in the embryo region. But here I want to say was good news also we have. We aim at having Sudan certified as Guinea Worm free by end of this year. After that, which we will have reason to celebrate as the entire embryo region will be free of this disease by end of this year. Thank you very much.
And I think, Dr. Fikri, I think it sends out a very powerful message that WHO has appointed an RD who is a tropical disease specialist, and I'm sure everyone welcomes you to your new role here. Exactly 10 years ago, I said we were in this room for that first Global Partners meeting, but also 10 years ago today, in this room, Merck made its first pledge for a praziquantel donation. Not only that, but since then, Dr. Garijo, your predecessor, promised a more than 10-fold increase in annual giving from 20 million to 250 million tablets. And what that means is that all school-aged children in sub-Saharan Africa can now be covered, reaching the minimum target of treating 75% of all children who are in need of treatment. You're the CEO of Merck Healthcare. We're delighted that you're here. We know it's not just about children, even though they are our future generations. We know it's also about other members of the community, including adults, of course. Can Merck and your industry peers sitting on either side of you go one step further to really turn off that tap, to shut that gap that exists?
Thank you, James. This is an easy question. The answer is yes. You see, thank you for your brief introduction. Life is really full of coincidences, right? Today we celebrate our 10 years anniversary on the partnership with WHO. We are very proud of this at the same time that we celebrate the 5th anniversary of the London Declaration and the 4th WHO NTD report. And Schisto continues to be a big challenge, mainly in Africa, because 90% of the patients are in Africa. Not only as a real health issue, but also being the disease that is having the highest economic impact. So yes, we have delivered already on all these promises that you have mentioned, stepping up the donation and all this, and we are going to go the extra mile. We are going to go the extra mile, first of all, to make sure that we have a formulation that is addressing the needs of the patients, because the majority of the patients who suffer from this disease are children, as you know. So we are developing a pediatric formulation which will be in the market soon. I am not so happy with the dates that I have been given, but you know, probably in the next 18 months to 2 years, we will have a pediatric formulation available, and this will allow these children to be more compliant and hopefully be treated easier, children below 6 years of age. And most importantly, we will continue to extend the reach and the number of our partnership in order to be able to be more effective in addressing the disease holistically. Because at the end, the pill only addresses the treatment. We need to do a lot on early diagnosis. We need to do a lot of education to be able to prevent infection, and obviously these 2 dimensions will concentrate as much effort as we put on the donation. So this is what we are aiming to do at the same time that we take our efforts towards fighting Ntds much further, going from Schisto to addressing other diseases, other Ntds, and right yesterday we signed an agreement with the NDI to offer our library to be able to go beyond Schisto and get into Leishmania and find additional candidates for Leishmania and eventually for Chagas disease. So again, I repeat, we are ready to finish the job and leave no one behind. This is our full commitment to today, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garijo. And as much as we, again, say about NTDs being that 10-year movement, it really began in a way with a special program on TD research in the 1970s. Recognition that tropical diseases demanded special research didn't make a lot of business sense at the time, not a lot of industry investment, really no incentive, but then it provided the science foundation for what we're talking about today. All these treatments are possible because of years of research and clinical trials. Even some of the drugs that were developed by Merck, I think, were for poultry at that time, adapted for NTDs. I think that was back in the 80s, and then we saw GSK in the 90s, Sanofi turning it round as well. Gates was there, not only donating, but setting up the medicine donation program. Roger Ribeiro from GSK and other companies we know is moving hard on STH and other infections, donating, I think, 1 billion tablets yearly. Sir Andrew Whitty, who is just retired, spearheaded massive donations, and in bringing donations to scale, huge players who truly define what it means to be partners, what it means to accelerate. What will this commitment look like under your new leadership?
James, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about GSK. At GSK, we are extremely proud of the role we have been able to play in tackling neglected tropical diseases, and remain absolutely committed to achieving the goals set by WHO. And when I'm saying GSK is proud, I'm talking about the 100,000 employees at GSK. Our new CEO recently engaged with 100,000 of employees and asked them what are the top things that at GSK that you appreciate the most, that we should maintain and protect. And the top of the list was GSK's commitment to global health. So our donation of albendazole for lymphatic filariasis will stay in place until the disease is eliminated, right? And however long it takes. Our donation for albendazole for deworming we have been committed until 2020, right? And we encourage WHO and the NTD community, right, to propose new targets and a bold agenda that we can be part of. So that's our ask, one of our asks. And I think NTDs for GSK, it's part of actually a wider commitment of global health, which includes also research, developing new treatments for neglected disease, tropical diseases in sleeping sickness, Chagas diseases, and Leishmaniasis, and also in vaccines, in terms of developing new vaccines for the developed world. Particularly, I'd like to highlight our malaria vaccines, James. And so to answer your question, right, your main question, I'm confident that GSK strong commitments to neglected tropical diseases and global health will continue under the leadership of our new leader, CEO, Emma Wellesley. Thank you.
Ambassador, another Brazilian. Yeah. May I ask you again to turn to the screens in the room, and we have a special message from Jim Yong Kim.
I'm honored to address this summit. I'm sorry I can't join you today, but this is the week of the World Bank Group IMF spring meetings in Washington, D.C. Diseases like river blindness, Guinea worm, elephantiasis, and trachoma, the neglected tropical diseases, are really the diseases of neglected people. They're diseases of poverty and inequality that affect the most vulnerable among us. At the World Bank Group, we're as committed to their eradication today as we were when we joined all of you 5 years ago to sign the London Declaration. As we look back over the last 5 years, this partnership has a lot to celebrate. We've made substantial contributions to the treatment and eradication of NTDs throughout Africa, from the Senegal River Basin to the Sahel, from Madagascar to the Republic of Congo. Thanks to the generosity of our pharmaceutical partners, we now have the largest drug donation program in history, with 1.5 billion treatments in 2015 alone. Because of those donations and the coordinated efforts of development partners, we've seen a 20% increase in drug distribution worldwide within the last 2 years. We're now reaching close to 1 billion people, more than 60% of those who need treatment. This is remarkable progress in a short period of time, and I want to thank all of you, the World Health Organization, the Gates Foundation, and our pharmaceutical industry partners who've stepped up to join forces and eradicate NTDs within our lifetime. Most of all, I thank the governments of all endemic countries for their untiring efforts to ensure better health for their citizens. The path ahead is steep, but we cannot let that deter us. When I started working on AIDS decades ago, many said it was an impossible task to treat people living with HIV in developing countries. Today, there are millions of people alive and being treated because we set lofty goals and pushed ahead. I'm convinced that we can win the battle against NTDs so that no one ever has to suffer from a preventable disease just because he or she is poor. I wish you all a successful summit, and we at the World Bank Group look forward to winning this battle with you. Thank you very much.
And we'll move from Dr. Jim Kim to Sir Chris Hon, one of the biggest champions in NTDs, who heads up the Children's Investment Fund Foundation. In particular, you've done so much for deworming programs and ensuring a link with the Global Partnership for Education. But also 3 years ago, when we look at CIFF and the Gates Foundation, each making a commitment of $50 million over 5 years towards STH infection. So Chris, there's been ongoing progress since that time in 2014. Perhaps you can pick up the highlights of what we need to know.
Okay, thank you. We funded a number of school-based deworming programs, in particular a national program in Kenya and programs in India to address soil-transmitted helminths, STHs. We did the Kenya program over 5 years and did a rigorous evaluation and found that the effects were temporary and that there was very rapid reinfection in 3 to 6 months. And while it was useful, because very heavy infection people, children were eliminated, there was a small 2 or 3% were eliminated, so it was not was valuable. We came to the conclusion that we need to break transmission and not just control STHs. And to do that, we need to treat adults, not just children, and we'll need the commitment of the pharmaceutical industry to help in that, because the commitments have been more for children only, although we are, in our Ethiopia program, we do have, I think it's Glaxo who have committed to help us on that. But secondly, we need to address sanitation in a serious way. And when we started doing this program, everyone said, oh, you can't do the sanitation, it's too difficult, too expensive. But we feel we have no choice, because it just is not adequate enough to do these temporary solutions. And so treat adults, must address the sanitation in a serious way. And finally, I think we have to create local ownership and accountability. Without that, the people in this room can't drive it. And we must measure We must measure not just coverage, we hear everything about coverage, but actually elimination, because otherwise we don't pick up the reinfection, and we think we've done something, but it becomes only temporary. And so I think those are very important learning points, but we are committed to try to make this happen in Ethiopia in conjunction with the government there.
Thank you. So as you pointed out there, not just the coverage, but also the elimination, which brings us very nicely now onto the last part of our program. Let's just quickly look at some ideas for elimination. We can't have a serious discussion about NTDs unless we talk about animal health and how it jumps from animal to human health. Dr. Elua, you were at the AMR high-level meeting. You spoke with Dr. Chan and with the Secretary General at that time in New York. You're here again for NTDs in Geneva. What I think some of us are still only beginning to truly understand and realize is that many diseases still make that jump from animals to humans. So Mary, very briefly give us an outline of the concept of looking at the holistic picture through One Health.
Thank you for your very interesting question, because it's true, and we did see on the video that veterinary public health is really a component of this integrated approach. But you have also to keep in mind that if the disease we are talking about today are neglected disease in humans, there are also neglected disease in animals. And in addition, the diversity of host reservoir, cattle, small ruminant, camels, fish, dogs, complicates a lot any veterinary action. And these diseases, it's clear, are not on the top of the agenda of veterinary services. Well, therefore, the question is really, how can we best involve veterinary service in controlling this disease? How can we best encourage them to develop at national level this integrated approach that jointly with WHO we are promoting, and thanks to Margaret Chan to support us. And therefore, I do believe that the strategic paper we are currently revising with WHO and also with FAO, which is the framework of our collaboration, will be very important for that, because we'll have two specific activities or domain of activities. First, the reinforcement of our database, because we cannot design any policy without robust epidemiological data in animals when we are talking about zoonosis, and the lady already highlighted that. And the second topic is the reinforcement of the bridge between the WHO evaluation tools of health system, health services, and the OIE PVS pathway, which is the tool for assessing the quality of veterinary services. We have also to encourage at national level both human health services and veterinary services to work together, to compare their effectiveness. But that means that when we are talking about One Health, and that will be my last word, time to time we have also to think one team and one budget. That means that when ministers, authorities, donors, NGO, pharmaceutical industry encourage, of course, the control and the eradication of human disease, they have also to consider if the adequate resources are allocated to the animal sector.
Neglected tropical diseases in humans and neglected tropical diseases in animals. Dr. Elua, you're the Director General of the World Organization for Animal Health, and very briefly, Lord Trees, you're here to represent the all-party parliamentary group on malaria and NTDs. You're also a veterinarian yourself, I understand. And it's just that inner working, that inner connection again between animal health and human health. Ebola, as we know, about 28,000 suspected cases, 11,000 deaths, unique because it involved a child playing in a field, coming into contact with infected bat feces, and then it spreads from that point on. And that's not an anomaly. We're looking also at flu, even flu, in humans. Tell us very quickly, one team, one budget, and then one health, which I assume you're supportive of. Why do you think it should be promoted in this context?
Well, One Health is very important, and I mean, a particularly good example, you've just been talking about the drug donation programs, and a number of those drugs were originally developed for veterinary use. I mean, notably, for example, ivermectin, which was first registered for worm in cows and other species. And I think that's a brilliant example of the transferability of the technologies and knowledge from the two spheres of veterinary science and human science. Human medical science. I'm here to represent, as you say, James, the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Malaria and Neglected Tropical Diseases, and it's a pleasure and a privilege to be doing that, and particularly as a veterinarian. And I'd just like to say that the group is chaired by Jeremy Lefroy, who I think many know here, and he sends his apologies for not being able to attend, but he's busy in Washington chairing meetings. And that group is a cross-party politically neutral group that embraces members of both our parliamentary houses, the Lords and the Commons. And its role is to inform and influence parliamentarians. And I think that's an extremely important role we play, and I think it has a relevance to many of us here in that going forward in accelerating the control of NTDs, we're going to need more resources. We commend immensely, of course, as the UK APPG in malaria and NTDs, the recent commitment by the UK government to further strengthen its historical commitment to NTDs. And we recognise the historic role that USAID has played, but there is still, going forward, a funding gap if we are to achieve the goals we have set ourselves. And so I think it's important for all of us in this room and beyond to be using our influence to influence parliamentarians and governments to step up to the plate and strengthen their current and future commitments. And may I just add one last remark? Whilst undoubtedly there are humanitarian and altruistic reasons for doing that, may I suggest the biggest persuader of politicians and governments would be enlightened self-interest. It is undoubtedly in the self-interest of the richer countries to be supporting the elimination of these diseases and enhancing the health and ergo ultimately the wealth of the endemic nations afflicted by the NTDs.
Thank you very much, Lord Trees. And speaking of people who really tried to be here but couldn't, and you know, we forget how logistically difficult. I know that a lot of our participants had issues with visas as well. The minister from Liberia, one of the governors from Nigeria, both couldn't make it at the last minute, but we have a very strong representation from Nigeria. We'll be hearing from them in the afternoon session talking about state funding. Dr. Chan, or anyone, if you don't want to answer this,
Depends on the question.
Depends on the question. We talked about the jump and the importance of animal to human health, but in the research for this, I kept on thinking, what about vector control? What are the lines that we can push over there? And we know that, I think it was in late January, that you were with the governing council and you spoke about this with them, but I know that that's going to take full flight during the World Health Assembly in a couple of weeks' time to be discussed with member states. The global vector control response, when we think about the Zika emergency, yellow fever outbreak, the Aedes-borne diseases and vector control more widely, where is, you know, the world's #1 health leader? Where do you add to that? Where can you push on that?
James, perhaps let me make 2 comments. I just want to follow on the points made by my good friend from OIE on the importance of working under One Health, integrating the veterinary sector as well as the health sector. In my public health career, I have managed and seen many outbreaks, and they are actually jumping from animal to human. The most famous and of course the biggest the one that worries us the most is the influenza. As we are speaking, the world is seeing a lot of influenza activity, be it in the animal or the human sector. Another example you mentioned is Ebola, MERS-CoV virus from camel, and in 2003, SARS. So all these illustrate dealing with the human aspect has limitation. We need to go back to the source, control at source. What is the ecosystem that we need to work with? So I just want to thank my colleagues and also, the parliamentarian representative on the important point of One Health. Part of our success is, coming together as a group of partners, coordinating, working in an integrated manner instead of working in silos. Now, the second point I want to make, you mentioned about the importance of vector control. Brazil, in the 60s, have successfully controlled, the mosquito to the extent, you don't get outbreaks. But now, the mosquito come back in a big way, and of course, you have seen Zika, dengue, yellow fever. So human activities is important for development, but we also need to look at what are the downsides in terms of once you have some success. Vector control is a big lesson for all of us to learn. When the world is successful in controlling vector, government stop investment in vector control, and they have to start all over again. You go back and look at all your country's investment. The teams, the vector control teams were disbanded. The mechanism was, cut because of funding shortage. So it's a short-sighted approach. So of course there are new mechanisms for vector control. Bill, you have talked about it, and the Gates Foundation in working to support Brazil and many other countries to look at what are the new modalities at some of the experiments that are being done in different countries. We hope that the world can pay more attention again to vector control, and it's not just mosquito, but many diseases, that we are talking, neglected tropical diseases are also transmitted by vectors. So it pays for all of us to refocus and look at what is the future for vector control. And of course, at this World Health Assembly, which is only in a few weeks' time, we'll have a very important discussion on that very topic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For one last time, we're going to turn down the lights in the room and watch this video.
Greetings. I wish I could be with you in Geneva to participate personally in this very important Global Partners meeting. Our collaborative efforts to reduce the burden of neglected tropical diseases send a message of hope to all people, but most especially to those who are marginalized. Our message is basically, you are important, and your family should have the opportunity to live healthy and productive lives. Congratulations to the governments and ministers of health of the many countries afflicted by NTDs on their efforts and determination to serve the poorest people. I've watched over the decades as national governments and commitments to provide for public health improvements grow stronger. We know that governments must ultimately be responsible for lasting changes in their own nations. The ongoing commitment of the World Health Organization is crucial. I want to express my gratitude especially to Dr. Margaret Chan for her leadership in the fight against NTDs. We know that success is hard-won, and it doesn't happen overnight. I'm confident that the next WHO administration will maintain its focus on NTDs, especially, of course, guinea worm eradication. How many of you have ever had guinea worms? The Carter Center's efforts to help affected countries eradicate guinea worm disease started in 1986, when an estimated 3.5 million cases occurred annually in 21 countries. I must admit there were times after taking on this challenge that I questioned my own judgment, if not my good sense. But because of each country's determination, coupled with your unwavering belief in the eradication goal, steadfast technical support from the CDC, and financial support of the United Kingdom, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the United Arab Emirates, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, Hilton, and many other generous partners. We are close to finishing off this debilitating disease. There were only 25 human cases in 3 countries in 2016. This dramatic reduction in cases of guinea worm disease, without the use of medicines or vaccines, would not have been possible without the diligence and heroism of countless village volunteers and the perseverance of the national programs. We cannot be complacent. We must be creative and persistent. The Carter Center will not give up until the last guinea worm is gone. Rosen, I, and the Carter Center deeply appreciate the NTD funding commitments from the Gates Foundation to help us meet all our objectives to reduce and even eliminate these diseases. Bill and Melinda Gates are dedicated partners for all of us. The Guinea Worm program's positive impact on public health and the quality of life inspired the Carter Center to fight some other NTDs, river blindness, trachoma, lymphatic filariasis, and schistosomiasis. With each of these efforts, an equal partnership with the government and the affected communities is essential. Last November, the Carter Center celebrated having assisted in the distribution of 500 million treatments against these diseases. You, our partners, have likewise expanded your commitments to meet these challenges. Rosen and I thank all of you for your dedication to fighting these diseases that affect the poorest of the poor. Our world is a better place because you care and because you translate your compassion into action. Thank you very much.
And as we all know, we plan to use that as our opening video, but as destiny would have it, probably there couldn't be a more perfect end to our section on elimination. Ambassador Peters will carry, I'm sure, all our best wishes back to President Carter. And then we move into the last section of today. Lord Bates, you mentioned at the top of the morning that you would like to use some time now to give us some good news.
Very happy to do that. Thank you very much. This is a moment of truth. We can't underplay just how destructive, how debilitating these diseases are, the misery and the pain they inflict. Often striking in childhood, NTDs can leave permanent legacy of blindness, stunting, anemia, and fever. But the success we've had in tackling NTDs over the last few years has shown what is possible when you bring together political commitment, leading scientific minds, and the power of business. It's now time to finish the job. It is time to end the misery by making substantial commitments today. Global Britain is helping to lead the fight against NTDs, and since 2009 we've delivered almost 450 million treatments. We will do more. Today I'm committing an additional £205 million on programs to tackle NTDs over the next 5 years. This is further to the £55 million of planned spending over the next 2 years, following from the UK's 2012 commitment to NTDs and implementation funding of £100 million from the Ross Fund. In total, the UK will invest £360 million in implementing programs over the next 5 years. This will more than double our current average annual investment in tackling NTDs. Over the next 5 years, our support will supply up to 1 billion treatments to people at risk in the developing world, protecting over 200 million people from the pain, disability, disfigurement, and death. Through this support, we will prevent up to 400,000 cases of blindness caused by trachoma. Our support will help to ensure the guinea worm becomes only the second human disease ever to be eradicated, and we will help to eliminate Kala-Azar in Asia. We are also investing significantly in groundbreaking research and technologies. And today I'm happy to confirm allocations from the research element of the Ross Fund of £48 million to the Drugs for Neglected Diseases Initiative, £30 million to the Foundation for Innovative New Diagnosis, and £10 million to the Coalition for Operational Research on Neglected Tropical Diseases. These programs will help support the development of new drugs and diagnostics to control and eliminate NTDs and provide evidence to improve the delivery of NTD programs. So Global Britain is once again keeping our promises to the world's poorest people. We will not stand by where there is suffering. UK aid will continue to bring hope to the bleakest places and the most excluded and neglected of people. But clearly, others must step up too, including the countries most affected. Today we have a chance to do something incredible, an opportunity to save the change and countless lives and for the future, and we must grasp it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Bates, and also to the Secretary of State, Priti Patel, who otherwise would have been with us today. Thank you very much. May I now invite Mr. Gates to speak to us.
Well, it's fantastic to hear all the ongoing commitments people have, whether it's the continued drug donations or the donor governments, including the fantastic announcement we just heard from the UK. On behalf of the Gates Foundation, I'm pleased to announce that we're committing $335 million over the next 4 years. Thank you. This includes $42 million to continue the Guinea worm eradication, which of course we hope will be the first parasitic disease eradicated. Our commitment underscores our total belief that everyone deserves to live a healthy life, and the years ahead will be critical as we improve our work and double down on everything we're doing with neglected diseases. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gates. And may I now invite Mr. Alexander De Croo, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Development Cooperation of Belgium.
Yes, thank you for giving me the word. Microphone working? No, it's not. Now the microphone is working. It's on. It's on? It's on. Good to hear. First of all, let me first say that I'm really happy to hear so many positive messages about what has been achieved over the past 5 years, and I think there's reasons to state it and to communicate it more and to celebrate it, but especially about the outlook we have on what we will be doing in the next years. From the Belgian side, this is the moment where we will formally join the coalition, which has been formed to control, eliminate, and eradicate the 10 NTDs, which I think is an important element. But the element I would like to emphasize more is the effort that we will be doing together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to eradicate one neglected tropical disease, which is the sleeping sickness. Sleeping sickness, actually we've had already 2 occasions to eradicate it, which was in 1960 and end of the 80s. And we actually came close, but we never completely finished it. And we are convinced that today this is the 3rd occasion, and at this 3rd occasion actually the stars today are aligned to eradicate it completely. Why do we believe that the stars are aligned today? 3 elements. First of all, on the scientific side, the diagnostic and the treatment has gotten tremendous steps forward. diagnostic, which is much, much easier than it used to be. And the treatment is not a poisonous injection anymore, which is a world of change. Second element is that the support of doing the diagnostic and doing the administration has changed completely. Digital is creating a new world, and is creating a new world for those teams who are working on the field, often in very remote areas. Third element is that today we can partner. No one is going to be able to do this alone, and the partnership together with a public donor, private financing, but also the pharmaceutical industry, which has already talked about this, puts us in a situation to eliminate the sleeping sickness completely. And so we are announcing here today, first of all, a commitment, a financial commitment on the Belgian side of 25 million euros between today and 2025, specifically on eradicating the sleeping sickness, which is adding to an additional effort that we already committed of approximately 10 million euros for the next 5 years. And we know that this is entering into a matching scheme with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which obviously we're very happy to have your collaboration on this. We really believe that this is the moment. And often we get questions, well, why is this so important? This is only about a few 10,000 people in the world. Well, I think there's a few answers. I think one answer is, why is it important? Because we can. Because today it is possible to have a second disease which we can make disappear. Second element is because the payoff is huge. Even if we are talking only about 10,000 people, it is a few 10,000 people today because of the tremendous effort that we already have been doing. If we do this final push today, we can finally make all those efforts of the last decades, make it pay off. And make it pay off not only for us, which I think has been stated, but definitely make it pay off for the 1 billion people who are today living in extreme poverty. If we say we do not want to leave anyone behind, then combating these diseases are really important. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Mr. de Croo, Belgium. I would like to hand things now to, and I feel I can now do it since we managed to get the video to play, to Ambassador Mary-Ann Peters of the Carter Center. We've heard about the center and the president taking such a pioneering role for 31 years, isn't it?
Yes, indeed, James. It is 31 years. And of course, President Carter wishes he could be here, and you heard him say how grateful he is, and I want to echo that, how grateful he is to the people who have made announcements this morning, to our long-standing partners, not only Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and DFID, but CIFF and the UAE in the fight against Guinea worm, which, as you know, is a typical NTD in that it is a horrifying, painful disease that afflicts adults and children alike. And I think it was Mr. Gates who said earlier that these diseases tend to be particularly horrific, and they are, I think we all agree, an assault on human dignity, yet another reason to get rid of them as far as possible. And of course, this is a disease, the other NTDs are, of the poor and dispossessed, people living at the very end of the road with little or no access to health care, and people whose concerns are often neglected. So again, I want to, first of all, reiterate President Carter's thanks to everyone here for the incredible generosity that you've shown in enabling the work of the Carter Center and the many other implementing organizations on the ground. Now, we've always known that the final few cases of Guinea worm would be the most difficult and expensive to find and deal with, and that is be true, but we continue to believe that the goal of eradication within the next few years is achievable with your help, even with the challenges we're tackling in Chad. And as you heard from President Carter, we will persist. I have one brief announcement, not related to Guinea worm, if you'll permit, James. Guinea worm is just one NTD, but it's been an inspiration for the Carter Center to fight several others, including notably river blindness, blinding trachoma, LF, and schisto. And now I'm delighted to announce that the Carter Center was chosen in February as one of 8 semifinalists in the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation's innovative 100 and Change grant competition. The 100 refers to a $100 million grant that the foundation intends to give once every 3 years for a proposal that will make significant progress in solving a problem of our time. And our proposal is to eliminate river blindness from Nigeria, and it is in fact a Nigerian proposal created by the Nigerian Onchocerciasis Elimination Committee and signed off on by the Minister of Health. And I say this because of course it's good news for the Carter Center, but I think it's good news for everyone in this room because it shows that organizations that have not traditionally been part of the NTD fight are coming to appreciate how important that fight is for global health, development, and equity. And the Carter Center will be part of a communications campaign crafted by MacArthur for the next several months until the decision is finally made in December. But during that communications campaign, we will try to showcase our proposal to eliminate river blindness from Nigeria as an example of an NTD that can be eliminated. Because as we've emphasized here, elimination is the ultimate in sustainability. Thank you.
Well, many decades ago, when this movement on NTDs began, there was no such thing as social media. But in this social media age, the WHO hashtag for this meeting and throughout the year is hashtag beat NTDs. And I think, Ambassador, you reminded us all over again that it's achievable because it does happen all the time. Thank you very much. I'm going to move now to return to Mr. Carlos Sanchez from EMS in Brazil, which is the largest pharmaceutical company in that country, both in terms of revenue, but also in terms of units sold.
Bom, thank you, James, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to stay here today. Today is my first time here, then I will tell a brief story about us. A little over 50 years ago, when my father opened a small pharmacy in Brazil, I'm certain that he never imagined just how big his dream would become. Since then, our history has been filled with constantly overcoming the challenges we had faced. Today, in addition to having been the leading pharmaceutical industry in Brazil for the past 10 years, EMS now has the biggest drug portfolio in Brazil, serving particularly every area in medicine. In 2000, EMS was the first company to produce and sell generic drugs to Brazilian consumers and prove their reliability and safety. Generic drugs have made a valuable contribution to increase the number of people in the country who have access to the adequate healthcare care. The EMS Research and Development Center is the biggest and the most modern facility of its type in Latin America. There we are developing various incremental innovation drugs that are available in the market and they employ the laboratory's own exclusive technology. At the same time, EMS has also invested in radical innovation through Brace Pharma, our company in the US, which works to take innovative therapies to patients. Today, the company has registered more than 90 patents worldwide. Our focus on innovation, in fact, has guided all the steps of MS, and we are moving toward our first drug sold in the US market in 2022. What brought us here today is the opportunity we have of actively collaborating once more to improve the health of human beings. EOS is a disease that affects many children in poor communities, where cases of neglected tropical diseases are growing. It was one of the first diseases mapped out by the World Health Organization for eradication back in the 50s, and there are currently 13 countries reporting cases. In 2012, researchers discovered that the use of a single orally administered dose of azithromycin, an antibiotic that has been in our portfolio since 2000, was an effective and the traditional treatment of EOS, which until then had involved penicillin injections. But a lack of access to azithromycin has significantly delayed this objective of eradication EOS being achieved. That was when we approached the World Health Organization to set up this partnership because it is right in line with our mission to care for people and our goal to promote health. Today, we are here officially announce the participation of EMS in this great World Health Organization project that aims to eliminate the EOS worldwide by 2020, which I am sure is also a commitment of all those present here. We are fully aware that reaching this goal in a short period of time will be a great challenge for us, but we shall spare no effort in achieving it, and we hope that with our support and the support of those gathered here today, we can significantly reduce the number of people still infected by the disease over the next 3 years. We already visualize an imminent elimination of EOS. As the representative of MS and well aware of our social commitment to Brazil and the world, I hope that this is just the first of many other collaborations we have with the World Health Organization in its fight against neglected tropical diseases that affect more than 1 billion people and have a direct impact on quality of life and the life expectancy. Two matters that I can certainly form part of our priorities. Once again, we would thank you for this opportunity. We are highly honored to be representing Brazil in this initiative that will benefit the lives of thousands of people and undoubtedly bear a lot of fruit in favor of health. We place CMS at everyone's disposal. By this cause, inspired many others and led us towards a healthier future of our nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Carlos Sanchez from EMS. And I'm going to stay with Latin America and move over to Dr. Sylvia Gold, who many of you know is the president of the Mundosano Foundation, an Argentina-based scientific NGO foundation working for the prevention and control of communicable diseases.
Thank you, James. Happy to be here. I am from Argentina, as well as our foundation, and happy to represent, together with Brazil, our continent. Mundosano is a family foundation supported by our own pharmaceutical group that's named Chemo Group, from which we are founders. We believe a lot in partnership, and we have a very long story with this. Our first cooperation with WHO was 40 years ago. 40 years ago, we started a development in Argentina, cooperation with the Ministry of Health and the Center for Vector Control in Argentina, and that was granted by the TDR. And we developed a product for the control of the vector of Chagas disease that was recognized by the review from Harvard University when they made the review from the decade of the 80s of TDR as one of the 3 most impact developments of TDR. So since then, we were very sustainable, committed with this sense of cooperation in which we believe a lot. We think there is no other way to approach very complex problems. We think they have to be in a multidisciplinary approach and in a multisectorial approach. And just to show some of the highlights this many years, in the 2011, we focus mainly, I must say, in Chagas disease, because for Argentina is the country with more patients infected of Chagas disease. And Chagas disease is the parasitic disease that represents more burden in our region. And probably the one that is more present globally in other countries. Chagas disease is a public health problem for the United States inside the country. It's a problem for Spain, as Dr. Navarro already said. And for us in Argentina, it's adept to be involved in Chagas disease. So in 2011, the shortage of the medicine, of the product for treatment of Chagas disease was announced, and that was a very terrible news, and we decided to produce it. And in record time, for February 2012, we developed the API and we developed the tablet, and we have the product in Argentina approved. That's the product Spain is using today. We are today the only suppliers of benznidazole recognized by WHO in the list of essential medicines. In the same year, 2012, we joined the London Declaration. That was very important for us because we think we can be useful if we provide evidence that can be expanded, and to be expanded we need to partnership and we need to belong to institutions. So we are happy today because formally we are now accepted as partners of WHO. This long collaboration now has been formalized, and our first commitment in this collaboration will be Chagas disease, not excluding others like STH, in which we have a vast experience. But the first steps will be Chagas disease, and the first thing will be a congenital Chagas disease, for which we'll provide the drug for the treatment of all the congenital cases. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Silvia Gold from the Mundosano Foundation, thank you very much. And I'd like now to invite Mikkel Vestergaard, who is from Vestergaard, a company that many of us know is a commercial company that produces vector control products.
Well, thank you. And let me start by saying what an honor it is to be here today, contributing to goals that are so vital to my company Vestergaard's reason for being. For the past 2 decades, we've dedicated our innovative platform to product development and to partner engagements aimed at reducing the burden of tropical diseases. We invented and through partners helped take to global scale the first long-lasting insecticidal bed net, so far protecting 1.4 billion people against malaria. In the process, it proved to be highly effective against many of the vectors of filariasis. We also invented the insecticidal wall lining, which successfully controls visceral leishmaniasis. And in partnership with the Carter Center, we've so far helped provide 37 million live-stroke Guinea worm filters, leading to the near eradication of the Guinea worm disease. Over the years, we have partially donated these filters, and since 2014, we increased our donation to 100% of filters used. We've been a long-term partner in the fight against sleeping sickness, inventing the zero-fly tiny target, which functions by attracting the tsetse fly to the screen and either killing them or trapping them. Recently, we took on a more active role to lead the industry liaison group to the Tripano Partnership, a consortium that aims to eliminate human African trypanosomiasis by 2020. And to accelerate this progress, we are pledging today to scale up our donations of the tiny targets. Similar to our donations to Guinea worm eradication. We will, as of today, donate 20% of all targets used, and over the next 3 years increase that donation to 100% as we move towards elimination. Eradicating a disease is a great challenge, and we continue to stick to our commitment that we've done for 2 decades now to eradicate Guinea worm, and as of today offer that same commitment and dedication to the eradication of human African trypanosomiasis, standing with our valued partners to see this eradication come true. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Vestergaard. I just want to check if there are any other announcements here in this room, in case I've missed anybody out. Okay, well, before we reach our closing, I was wondering if we return to what Dr. Chan was talking about in terms of the asks. There were 2 asks that were established via the London Declaration, the roadmap period, January 2012. As Dr. Chan said, an extremely rare opportunity for everyone to be in the same room together at the same time for the same reason and the same purpose going ahead. So I'm going to very quickly just take asks in a sentence. What are the asks that you have of the World Health Organization? Don't be shy, because then I'll just ask you personally. Bena Pekul, what is the one ask you have?
The one ask is to create a better environment for developing new products that are necessary for the elimination. So particularly, I would say on a regulatory field, because I think when you have a new product, it should reach people as soon as possible, and here the WHO and the country could play a major role.
Okay, so Bena Pekul, DNDi, saying better environment for developing new products. What are the asks? Let's go to Amit Nathwani from Sanofi.
Yeah, I just have one ask, which is there's been a lot of talk about technologies, digital technologies for surveillance, screening, predicting where these outbreaks could occur. And I would love to see an initiative with technology companies to actually be able to drive the optimization of that as part of this going forward.
That was from Dr. Nathwani.
Our ask would be strong partnerships with the WASH community and emphasize the importance of that.
Okay, so the water and sanitation community, says Chris Hunt from the CIFF. Let's go quickly to Mexico.
Thank you. Recently, you are interesting question. For us, it's very important the actions against vector-borne disease. For us, it's important to have a tactical approach and continuation in epidemiological surveillance, entomological surveillance, health promotion and social marketing, insecticide resistance and monitoring that's resistance, the vector control and the healthcare guidelines. In this moment, Mexico reaffirms our commitment to eliminate the Ntds. In the facts, in the last 2 years, obtained the recognition and eliminate the onchocercosis and the trachoma. Thank you, Dr. Chan, for your support and in the group of experts in the World Health Organization to review in the field our epidemiological situation. For obtaining that, Mexico had an integral approach from the social determinants, intersectoral interventions, and strengthen our local capacities. Thank you.
That was Mexico. The ask now from Dr. Ianari, who is the Minister of State visiting us from Nigeria.
Okay, thank you very much. Very simple asks. Nigeria has the highest burden of persons suffering from sickle cell anemia, and it's a major contributor to infant mortality. We would like to see some more WHO engagement with sickle cell anemia. Second is NOMA, Cancrum oris, which is a disease that, necrotizing disease that affects the lips and the face, which I believe I am told is already being considered, but would like to bring to the forefront.
Thank you very much. From Nigeria, Professor Trinidade from Oswaldo Cruz.
Thanks. I'd like to thank Dr. Margaret Chan. And I have one question, because besides sanitation, innovation, and the health access, I think that is very important education for health professionals. I'm thinking about the experience of WHO Collaborative Center for Global Health and South-South Cooperation at Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, Brazil. As Ambassador Azevedo had mentioned, we have in Brazil, I think, an important role in South-South cooperation, and specifically in terms of education. So I'd like to know about this topic, specific topic, education for health professionals. I think that it's a very important topic for the objective of this meeting and to eliminate neglect disease. How do you think about this question?
Okay, Dr. Chan's taking those notes. Can we go to our two US delegates, to Ambassador Peters from Carter Center, and then we'll go to Irene Koch from USAID.
I'll just be very quick. We'd appreciate WHO advocacy on political issues. First of all, as I think Dr. Fikri pointed out, a lot of the sufferers from NTDs also suffer from violence. You mentioned Sudan and Yemen. We see it in South Sudan and as well, where we can't reach or we can't surveil as well as we would like to because of violence. So if WHO could advocate in the UNGA and other UN bodies for attention to some of these conflicts that are often forgotten and neglected. And the related issue is to advocate for continued political will in the end game of elimination, particularly where cross-border issues may affect the ultimate outcome. Thank you.
We'll go to Irene Koch and then to Ambassador Shino.
Great, thank you. So as we talked about earlier, the commitment of WHO going back 10 years to the last of these meetings has been extraordinarily important for the success. So main ask is continue that and please pass that on. So don't step back, and the continued ambitious goals for the NTD program and the NTD community is really, really important. Part of the other, in addition to the political role that Ambassador Peters just talked about, is also, WHO plays such an important role in setting guidelines and giving real important guidelines to countries to move forward. So that's another ask, is to continue to move forward on those guidelines. There's a number of the details where we need new strategies for different components of the program. So that and continue to move forward on that. But thanks, and keep with us.
Yes, well, not only to Madam Chan, but all of us here, I would say responsibility. I think the responsibility comes together with rights, and if each and every of us will stick to our responsibility, to our commitment, or to our goal, ambitious, and to the ownership, that will be my ask. Thank you.
Can we go now to China?
Thank you. I'm from China CDC. I'm also the chair for the West Pacific RPIG group on neglect tropical disease. In the WEPRO region, we have a very unique character on the foodborne tropical disease. These foodborne tropical diseases are neglected among neglected tropical diseases, so WHO may pay more attention on this kind of disease. Thank you.
And then we've got a non-doctor, sorry, I don't know your name.
Hang on. Yes, David Molyneux from the School of Tropical Medicine in Liverpool. I think one aspect which I would encourage WHO and all partners to reflect on, reflecting the extraordinary momentum we've had in this area, is that we need to continue the capacity strengthening which is underpinning and will underpin not only the research environment but also the implementation environment from national level through to community level. Unless we continue the momentum for strengthening that capacity across the pitch of NTDs, we will not sustain the delivery. The other point I would make in this context is the issue of strengthening laboratories to underpin monitoring and evaluation and surveillance. That is essential. Unless there's quality there, then we're not going to achieve our endpoint goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And have I missed Dr. Fikri? Is there anybody else? and then we'll close up the ask and we'll finish with Morocco.
It's dangerous.
Well, you're the tropical disease.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to raise one issue, that if we can make every year, there will be a prize for a recognition of that particular state that eliminate any disease. Year by year, this will encourage the other member state and their support to this program. The other issue I would like to hear, to also look at the private health sector. What is the role of the private health sectors in sharing this responsibility? The number 3, I support the issue of the strengthening surveillance, monitoring, and measures of prevention by community, more education, and elaborate on these diseases, and especially in the partner countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fikri. I'm going to finish off with Morocco, and the last ask will come from Brazil. So Morocco, what is your ask?
Merci, Professor.
Thank you. I'm the Public Health Director at the Ministry of Health in Morocco, and I'd like to thank WHO for its support to Morocco, recognizing the elimination of trachoma only recently. Morocco has also reached 2 objectives for eliminating diseases such as Schistosomiasis and leprosy, and we'd like to ask WHO if they could define the modalities for certifying and recognizing that elimination, and that would really give us encouragement in moving forward with eliminating other diseases.
Moroccan ambassador, would you like to give us your ask?
Yeah, I would ask more of this. Government, academy, private sector, private foundations coming together for a good cause. We cannot fight diseases, let alone Ntds, without strong ties and strong partnerships. Brazil has been a victim of outbreaks, diseases, Zika, yellow fever, you tell me, and it has happened in Brazil. But we have also been able to develop rapid responses. So we are ready to come forward and give our experience, share our experience. Last but not least, the donation announced today by Mr. Sanchez is something new, innovative, extraordinary in Brazil, because it's the first time a sector has come forward to do a donation in this organization. I hope this is just the beginning of many others. Thank you.
I was going to say, because I know that you wanted me to express congratulations to all the countries, all the companies here, all the NGOs on an incredible job done. "16 years ago, before you became Director General, the World Health Organization appointed a Goodwill Ambassador specifically for the elimination of leprosy, but the organization could not have found a more dedicated and determined individual in Yohei Sasakawa, who for many more years served as chairman of the Nippon Foundation. Mr. Sasakawa has made the fight against leprosy the very purpose of his life, so much so that he uses at least a third, well, that's what it says on paper, and I'm sure it's much more than that, at least a third of his year to visit endemic countries all over the world, and of course all the countless communities, populations, families, and individuals within. Again, it's not just a disease, but as your own ambassador said, Ambassador Shino said, it's the human rights of the people who are affected first and foremost. To recognize his lifelong contribution, Dr. Margaret Chan, before you retire, has decided to award a WHO medal to the WHO Goodwill Ambassador for the elimination of leprosy to Mr. Yohei Sasakawa.
Thank you so very much. James, I just would like to make a few comments. Okay.
Mr. Sasakawa, I know that Dr. Chan wanted to invite you just now to join her to sit there, but you can do it from this position over here. Congratulations again. And I know that you have a few words to share with us.
Director General Margaret Chan, ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly honored to have been awarded the WHO Gold Medal today. It was my aim to achieve leprosy elimination during Dr. Chan's tenure, but as you all know, we still have a little further to go. Therefore, when I learned I was to receive an award from WHO, I was sure it would be a silver medal at most. But to my greatest surprise, it is a gold medal. I would like to share the honor and the joy of having been awarded the medal today with everyone I have worked with. For 40 years, the Nippon Foundation and the WHO have had a strong partnership. The Nippon Foundation has worked together with WHO as its principal donor for leprosy control. Our financial support for the free provision of drugs in the second half of the 1990s had a major impact in helping to bring down the number of new cases of leprosy. With Novartis now providing drug security, we have been able to use our funds for other initiatives, such as measures to address stigma and discrimination. It then came to my mind that leprosy can be likened to a motorcycle. The front wheel represents the medical approach to cure the disease, and the back wheel represents the social approach to eliminate stigma and discrimination. The motorcycle cannot move forward unless the two wheels move together. Receiving this gold medal, there are three things that I, as WHO Goodwill Ambassador, would like to share with you because I believe they make a significant difference. The first concern directly approaching political leaders of endemic countries and their commitment. When I visit these countries, I am often surprised at how little political leaders know about leprosy in their own country. Some claim they have no leprosy, or others have only outdated knowledge. So I talk to them about the disease and seek their commitment to tackling it. I have found that the commitment of political leadership adds momentum to effort taking place elsewhere on the ground. The second point concerns promoting correct understanding among the general public. through the local press and radio, as well as popular culture. Because in some areas, written communication is difficult. I have found that street theater, music, and entertainment can be more effective in conveying the message that leprosy is curable, treatment is free, and discrimination has no place. The third point concerns forming sustainable initiatives. As Goodwill Ambassador, I have been bringing together government, medical professionals, NGOs, health workers, organizations of people affected by leprosy, and other stakeholders. In doing so, I have realized the importance of encouraging those affected by leprosy to play a major role, speak out, and build relationships with those in government. This communication leads to empowerment of those affected by leprosy and sustained commitment from the government. The this morning once again underscored the importance of controlling and eliminating Ntds so as to break the chain of poverty and realize sustainable development. In closing, I would like to pay tribute to Dr. Chan's leadership over the past 10 years. Thank you very much.
Well, one of the legacies of WHO's roadmap was, of course, the London Declaration, and from that sprung a coalition of leaders like Mr. Sasakawa, who was there long before that and through that as well, through the declaration, but many more new leaders from a number of health and development agencies. They call themselves Uniting to Combat Ntds, and in tribute to their beginnings, they would like to make an award of their own to Dr. Chan herself for everything done in the 10 years since 2007, and I suppose we can also say the 5 years since 2012. This is no ordinary recognition, reminding us of why we work each day to reduce the threat of Ntds just a little bit more. The leadership of Uniting to Combat Ntds have invited a very special individual to present the award. One of them will be Wendy Harrison of the NNN Network, but we have we're talking about the Brazilians in the room. We have a secret Ghanaian powerhouse as well. We've got the Deputy Director General, we've got the Deputy Minister over here, and we want to introduce you to the other Kofi in this room. It's Kofi Nyako, who's a headmaster at St. Elizabeth's Special School in Elimina in Ghana. He's married to his wife Lucy. They have 4 children. At the age of 10, Kofi was diagnosed with leprosy, and by then it was too late to reverse some of the effects he now lives with. He experienced the stigma, the discrimination, the pain that is associated with this disease, but that has become his life's calling, to help others just like his younger self. He's also the International Leprosy Association Council member representing Africa. Please welcome Wendy Harrison and Kofi Nyako. And I'll put them in the middle as well. In 1 second. You have a few words to say.
So, thank you, James. The success of Uniting to Combat Ntds in accelerating the collaboration and action towards elimination has been due to the very strong high-level leadership of the WHO. The partners and the partnership have a very active and collaborative partnership with the WHO NTD team. And we are all enormously grateful for the continued support and guidance of Margaret Chan and her team. So on behalf of Uniting, we would like to share a small memento of our gratitude for your continued leadership and commitment to NTDs, but also the people whose lives have been affected by these infections. And with that in mind, I'd like to introduce again Kofi Nyako to share some of his thoughts and thanks on behalf of Uniting.
Thank you very much. It is an honor to be here representing people around the world. I had leprosy at the age of 7 years. I had a small patch on my face, and later I saw another one on my stomach. It took me 13 good years before I started treatment. So the time I got to the hospital, I was already deformed. Lucky enough, some of the Roman Catholic Reverend sisters took me as their son. I continued my education, especially when I got to secondary school. It wasn't easy for me. People were teasing me, but in my mind, I had so many dreams. So I said, I will not allow this leprosy to take away my dreams. So I kept on. I remember one time, one geography master refused to mark my papers. But gradually, I was able to complete my school. Luckily, I had a chance to come to England to become a teacher for children with special needs. So now I have my own school in Ghana, which is totally for special needs children, and it's serving so many other people. And also, I have been helping people who have been in the leprosy colony for so many years to reunite into their societies with their families, because the disease is curable. I have married for 22 good years. I have four children, 3 big boys and 1 little girl. Today, in fact, I don't know what to even to say. Recently, progress in NTC discussed today means that less children will have to live their lives with effect of these neglected tropical diseases. I dream of the days when no one will have to suffer the effect of these diseases. Dr. Margaret Chan, on behalf of those that will have healthier lives, I would like to give you a small token from United Partnership to thank you for all that you have done for us. You will open it. It's a small scarf with so many different from the neglected tropical, from the London Declaration. Thank you very much for everything.
Oh my goodness. Hey! It's all the diseases.
This has to be the most creative scarf I have ever received. Actually, it depicts all the NTD, the worms, and all the vectors that have been affecting the health of people at least. So thank you all for your leadership, for your countries, for your industry, for your NGOs, for your scientists, coming together, working with WHO to really put an end to a of Diseases called NTD. We can do it. The London Declaration, bringing together all of us, have demonstrated tremendous progress. Yes, we have made tremendous progress. This is a crowning moment, but the job is not done yet. We have listened to so many of you, your experience, personal experience, coffee, and all the experience from different people. I would be remiss for not making a few comments. The power of partnership, we must remember this. And on that, I would like to make two specific points. The importance of multilateralism through United Nations, and including WHO. The coming together of countries to find solutions to address the world's most complex and difficult issue. And WHO is happy to contribute to this in NTD, and of course, in many other areas. On that, I would urge all the countries in WHO to continue to support the Secretariat to do what is right for the people of this world. I also have two asks. Number one, as I said, countries must come together to set the priorities for WHO. Not too many, because when you have too long a list, it's not priority. It becomes a laundry list. And this is something through the WHO reform we are doing in the governance reform, the programmatic reform, and the managerial reform. I want to thank all the countries for your commitment and support to WHO and to support multilateralism. The second point is, NTD illustrates the importance of non-state actors. WHO, as a member state's only organization, sometimes I have many questions from countries asking me, why are you working with the pharmaceutical industry? The answer is clear today. Not working with the innovators for medicines, for vaccines, for diagnostic, and not working with other innovators like some of you mentioned the importance of new technology, the digital technology industry, to help mapping, to help measure results, to report back to parliaments and Congress. We would not be able to continue this journey. So working with the industry, now they are called non-state actors in the WHO, because our member states, have just approved the framework for engagement with non-state actors. So next time, I hope countries will not keep asking me, why are you working with the industry? Next time, if you ask me that, I'll tell you, go and look at the report we have done for you in NTD. Just for your information, yesterday, the drug donation within 24 hours broke the Guinness record. More than 207 million tablets were donated by the industry in 24 hours. Just put a figure to it. I was informed by my team the drug donation per year amounts to about $2 to $3 billion alone. So I want to pay tribute to the industry, the North and the South countries. And I want to thank Brazil, Argentina. Argentina, I have another ask for you. The next G20 is in Argentina. Make sure the health of the people of this world is addressed. Economy is important. Without health, without education, people of the countries cannot support the economic development of the countries. I also get another question from some of my member states. They are asking me, why are you working with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? I think today gave you the answer. The priorities of WHO are set by the member states. That I protect with jealousy, because in a multilateral organization where member states alone are members, their prerogative to make priority for the organization is sacrosanct. We must ring-fence that. Having done that, I share with all development partners, philanthropies. Today here I have gift, thank you, and then the foundation and many others, and fund, and so on and so forth. So when the stars are aligned, meaning the priorities are set by countries, but the development partners include the Gates Foundation, who like to invest in that, we need to bring them together through a partnership, what I call public-private partnership. For those of you who know that, I've been working with the Gates Foundation without conflict of interest for more than 10 years. But the Gates Foundation was only recognized by WHO as an NGO in official relations with this organization in less than a few months, only in the executive board in January this year. And I'm happy to continue on this journey with many non-state actors, civil society. You heard the importance of the NDI, you heard the importance of MSF, and you heard the importance of alliance. Going forward for the world, perhaps this is my parting word with you. Think of the people. Think of the people of this world. There's nothing we cannot do if we put people in the center. So let me once again thank all of you in this room, your governments, your institutions, your scientists, your civil society, your industries coming together to make this impossible task possible. Thank you.
Well, we close this Global Partners meeting on NTDs with the proof that the gains made in the 5 years since the and the London Declaration offer every feasible hope that the goals set for 2020 will be achieved, but it doesn't stop there. Lives will continue after that year, and so will the NTDs until we can stop them. It is time to remove the neglected from the tropical diseases. I am told that apart from the World Health Assembly that will take place down the road in the Palais, this will be the very last meeting, global meeting, that Dr. Chan hosts here today. So I think a standing ovation for you. And I think lunch is now served. Thank you very much.
It was great, wasn't it? Thank you again. Wonderful. You